throw a pitch. Not bad. Not bad, dude. That's all. One strike. That's a strike. So you chased it. Of course you chased it. Then you smart man. Yeah. 30 miles in the middle. He is the chair. He is the chair. Let's start with that. You are special, brother. That's you gotta relax.
I was coaching our teams to success.
I did see the GK pre-run.
Just to make sure you can better than
It was a K debate. I was like, whatever.
Is this even online?
No, they're good.
Oh.
Just being true.
You're right back. Oh, yeah. Facebook, the person I saw was going to this week. You can have first of it back. I'll never look straight and see nothing. Yes, correct. What is it?
I just think that it's she's already been nearly 3 times showing us photos.
How do you run this? No, I just finished. I had made sense, right? There you go. And then I'll just. still have this down here, unfortunately.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's a weird room order. It's like 2, 3, and then 1.
Not to make this needlessly stressful, but the debate was supposed to start 5 minutes ago.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it started at 10.
That's
Oh
what
my
we
God.
thought. Oh.
My bad. Oh, shit.
I like the way you announced that.
Yeah, that's embarrassing. Did you say my YCF already?
Yeah.
On the chain?
Oh, or not on the chain.
You say you sent one to
Sorry?
Did you say you sent one to
No, we haven't sent it yet. Yeah, could you?
Yeah, I'll do that.
an automated chain?
There's an automated chain.
Well, it's there, like, I think it's.
Yeah, I think there is.
Oh, there
Did you-
is.
Did you get
I
it?
don't think I got one.
No?
No.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So neither of you got it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got it.
But someone else on our team got.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks like they put Josh Harrington on it, so
There's
there's.
a Giorgio on it as well.
Oh, so it-
Wait, sorry, I can't find this one. Do you have the chain?
I do have the chain.
Oh, that's weird. I don't
Why
have it.
all in that?
Thank you.
Uh, that's interesting. It's like, I don't have the chain.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Yep. Do either of you need to be added to the chain?
I think he does, but I can add your email once after you send. Like after you add them too, I'll.
Yeah, let's do it.
Sure, just go ahead and add your email.
Oh, to which?
She's just about, she's adding.
Oh, yeah. It's just Anish Badani. Should I just type it? Or yeah. It's okay.
I something want to see that.
Good enough.
Cool. You all ready? Okay, let's go.
Contention 1 is innovation. AI is precluded from legal inventorship. This incentivizes development, inventive AI, and disclosure of new AI-driven innovations. AI has 20 regulates AI would encourage the innovation patents on innovation with substantial value. The benefit of innovation aside development inventive AI financial incentive are particularly important because it's innovation intensive. If inventions are patentable, aging generally not being inventors and incentive we grow logistical fairness and efficiency. Patenting AI inventors and patents and public disclosure owners be to protect inventions, trade secrets. Pharmaceutical companies that have major orders spend secret after products invented, obtain regulatory approval, extending patentability jumpstarts pharma innovation, alternative mechanisms fail, given ski red, and Gen 20 patent protection of AI invention, boot efficiency, R&D, lead more innovation, and companies desire financial yield, patent compensate for expensive long-term development process, lucrative, AI encourage the industry to engage in more AI strategies. With the patent benefits, balance between innovation and avoidance monopolies, the patent does not permit a patent owners to license and advance technically licensed to be a company of public interest to open source. There's no incentive for foreign companies to be able to occurs without patent protecting for sending pharmaceuticals, neither been developed in patent seeking place. More than benefit incentives innovative rather than malls. The patent is more including exclusively constantly and transparency, showing patent rights, but making it possible to review the decades-long constant drug R&D. It's necessary to resolve current legal ambiguity in pharma AI R&D collaborations. Osborne on slide 19. Pharma companies and data know how to do with the media. I'm in the innovation gene. Especially the AI capable of the best data set is able to use company data. Creates attention under IP to train model rather than pharmaceutical. The partners data, but the question arises whether I partner will own it. IP as AI designer drugs directly. Question who the open and collaborating aspects of portion IP. AI innovation is the key and challenge to solving disease. Majority 21. Investing will improve the application AI with the enhancement having furnace and responsive AI models spreading structure virus and mapping this pattern machine. Coming through vast research expanded ability of combat engineering. Emerging threats, outbreak detection capable, data ingestion, monitor, forensic diagnostics, payloads, predictive tools, identify errors, areas, no data decline warning systems, combine outbreak detection or earlier, more accurate detection of advanced bioforensic threat analysis, bioforensic takes methods, AI attribution, new technique, data including weaponized pathogen trace, dropless check, early onset infection, helping more, develop more effective tests, highly dependent on AI tools, adaptation systems, flexibility, repurposing drive support, automate population building models, AI, advancing user identity demands of pandemic supplies, reliability tools, increase the AI design, personal improve AIs, help versus remotely monitor basic capabilities, integrates the technical help reduce the disease transmission. Diseases cause extinction. Human 21. Human life assimilation experiment. They started seeing if all knows a human allergies, lead to human extinction, black death, smallpox, and SARS. Ebola and large population risk accuracy with the mobility, threatening humankind. Effective to spread with us and like every single person. I agree. Sending me sarcastic models. I have and I kind of quality system. You about fears, the disease characteristics, results reveal certain disease can lead to human extinction. Externally, inventorship fosters cross licensing and open innovation by limiting avenues for PAs. Full 21 inventorship will lower the cost of serving PR. Advising companies to develop AI and high quality products or bind them. A small piece of AI can compete with a giant ability portfolio, lower time than limiting PAs. Enable them to faster benefits include cross-selling open source with greater efficiency. So now asset portfolio cross-selling competitors at times. Competitors boxes and sales time. Shared portfolios, knowledge and innovative patterns for solving the rights, give pattern off the market, limited PAs, and inventorship repeatedly, benefit PAs or PAs encouraging beneficial practices, PAs, trend innovation, empirical consensus, HEPL 13, number 70 value, impact PAs, determine innovation by increasing cost for firms and suits revenue wealth of the 83 billion for annual R&D, reduces 80% protect developers, so yes, and especially in computer, 70% of patents, challenge is only effective commercialization. And also, first thing, given they develop products while litigation will for provision, defendants are found to have infringed and have less effect on risk expenses, influence direction of research with disruptive innovation, existing tech, and hence we get started against incumbent firms. Closed innovation makes redressing existential emerging tech impossible. Class Callahan's 18, almost all problems are complex. Weapons, biotech, engineering, nanotech, genetics, robotics, and learning mankind. The human collaboration results in innovation, and we improve the capacity to manage tech and indicator survival. Openness is necessary to coalition of damage tech. Planners, with the ADU product, and eliminate the wealth of the openness, and the control at expense of discovery relations you not helping us optimal manage tech and collective leverage these are the advertising container price. Contention 2 is conception. Lack of AI inventorship ensures an imminent overthrow of the foundations of IP. Dornus 20 with the advent of AI and the patent laws, the innovation, the main innovation, the ultimate majority of AI reality made to find people on the horizon have doctrines so finding that humans invention without invention will fail to self-love very foundation is so fundamentally dismissed. A patent specifically requires altering the conception requirement. A doctrine that declares the inventor must have significantly contributed to the finding of an invention. Solutions based on the finding of the nearest person DC as a touchstone of inventorship. Dornus 20. Well, the 80% foundation mean that invention without inventor, conception, closer to invention, demarcation lies between conception, not patentable activities, innovative human, innovative AI, not the inventor, more than the state of the art. No actual inventor exists. The AI does not. The USP of practice first recognized will become there's constant significant return misconception doctrine. The couples invention right now, mission complicated, overall rights, anti-invention patents, rights of arbitrary recognition that makes it impossible to get rights actually deserving actor. It opened the floodgates to costly litigation, collapses endless patent cancellations. Below 21, the system of cancellation, human right, the inventor does not set high conception. The AOTA, named the board inventor, a company being invention with a value that added on board with the investment. These global companies without AFF fees and have to unable to survive with high legal protection without allowing the AI to invent this being just encouraging the difficulty drawing the line, open the floodgates as those seeking that now. But let's just finally Brian taking the research I covered. That spills over to patent joint inventorship in biotech innovation. Joy 2, the patent schemes and methods of detecting disease require knowledge of the sciences. The conception requires the mental picture and invention. A patient not disabled is contribution. Revenue plan courses to claim by more than invented. The invention would fail. That rest stable revenue expectations so too. Patent availability of crucial rights include all of the use of invention with use of few financial importance each. inventor can license the invention without consent with the other counters of the drug the disease or the other inventor issue by invention or use charge exporting license fees, maintaining an edge in synthetic biologies, keeping the U.S. setting the global rules of road for CRISPR, rather on 15 in the U.S. losing competitiveness in biological usage, consequent national security application, including countermeasure responding to biological weapons. Next few years, we have already set rules of world synthetic bio use may be limited to actively participating governments. Use expert leaders are shaping the dominant by nations at the edge of standards due to the IPN development. Rules are created by those who are most intimately familiar. One example is CRISPR. Determining the red line is critical to use crossmaker would have the same that need be at the forefront. Lack of regulation of CRISPR risk numerous scenarios for extinction. Russell 17. Those first previously having the West, they kind of large R&D CRISPR. CRISPR developed by the papers of over biological agent. He has created a role in the winner of from the or introduce anti-aging that have the most of a universal fertility constantly lost in reproductive capacity and extinction. China seeking CRISPR lead the China research the taking the pushing boundaries have to take the regulate this technology before new scientific arms case out of control the miscurrent window to define right approach this moment to mitigate extraterrestrial rights plan. The United States should has artificial intelligence with intellectual property rights bearing capacity. Contention 3 is solvency. The plan establishes the test to check the AI in question. If passed, the AI is granted IP rights as an author or inventor, and the rights are assigned to the AI's users or creator. Paragraph 18. The law should recognize sufficiently AIs as a inventor that's the API rights assigned to national legal person knows that the testing, creation, original development, and penalty review instructions provided by a programmer. Ensures the demarcation of the tools and creation creative AIs and sending rules of specific rights assigned. There's no requirement for recognition of AI to be a legal person. That would dynamically raise a benchmark for non-obviousness standards by including inventive AI. Have 20. The penalty is standard by the hypothetical skill person to find obvious one. The AI is standard with the skill person to inventive AI. Dynamically raise the benchmark of compatibility. I probably pass maintain the distinction more difficult models can rise as the AI becomes increasingly sophisticated. Spillover as Robin's history proves that right grants are limited and contextual doesn't necessitate abstract questions of personality. Robin 16. The court's vesting of his personal incorporation, IUD, equals small size about a question who's entitled to the key protection of any right, evidence have right to go to migrants have rights to bear arms. The question of your personality not new, the alleged court has never totally addressed the question who also the given right to be given adaptation right by right claimed by Cayman. Despite the recluse nature of most rights, criminal list of this person that qualify in the basic which court grants person to find food without lacking recording of fairness or body doctrine or jurisprudential theory because the court has vested rights and no consistency grounds. A person regulates silence or court constitution makes amorphous. Human-centric innovation in pharma is plateauing. Ramen 19. Research of the next more science drug molecules to the physical traverse on the positive machine learning data programs to explore all possible robot molecules. The drug discovery that is hugely expensive and frustrating. Deep learning make the drug discovery quicker. The breakthrough thing is hard. The drug discovery more complex. The drugs have fallen in the last few decades. Searching for the most dimension fate. The AS spot. AS greater than technical from the method of innovation that reshapes innovation. AS to drive that in R&D even faster, cheaper, more disconnected. Pipelines. New ways is driving up the drug discovery and innovation. Economies find the PSR. Some constant research productivity. 6.8% annually. Investment in new areas and innovation that generally feels generally overall story where you low hanging fruit. Chance of penicillin will fall into a lateral slip.
You
Yep.
Great. I don't really know how to pronounce this author. The internally to it's like AI's key to pandemic response is about for preparedness. It's about like using once like COVID or something would happen, it's about using AI to predict where it goes. Why is that the same as your evidence about drug development in AI?
Well, we need to develop vaccines to combat, emerging viruses.
This evidence
Our
says,
evidence says that disease coordination is good. And
you called it models that predict the structure of the virus and map the spread of infection.
Yeah.
Why is that the same as R&D with like drug development?
I mean, I think a part of the card is pretty explicit that we need further enhancements in AI to accelerate the pharmaceutical drug discovery pipeline. I think Dr. is pretty specific.
Areas like the cards that talk about it are talking about monitoring and preventing with predictive tools that identify areas.
I don't agree with that assessment. I think the
What
Yavinsky
line
read and
is it about?
the Yavinsky read and Gen evidence says that patenting AI inventions creates a drug pipeline, like when you said, which would expedite the process of finding solutions to emerging viruses.
I guess I just don't think the other information about that. That's fine.
Well, I mean,
Advantage 2, what qualifies as conception?
Sorry?
What qualifies as conception?
I think our Permal evidence defines the exact test that we use. The AI generating something that can be formatted as a business idea.
What does it mean for the AI to generate something? Like, how do I know if my AI generated or I?
You can patent a business idea now, something analogous to a natural person generating that idea. If the AI were to have generated it.
Right. I guess my question is like,
Yeah.
let's say I tell an AI like I want to develop, like a drug or something. How much work does the AI have to do? Like if I said I want a drug to solve this disease, and the AI doesn't help.
Well, I would have to learn it from the training data. Actually, the Permal evidence is quite good at establishing the distinction
Doesn't
between
all
just
AI
telling.
learn from training data?
No, it's like because the AI would basically there's a difference between discriminative AI and generative AI. Discriminative AI basically takes a data set and separates into two sections. Generative AI finds clusters in the data and generates its own data based on those clusters.
Okay, is the latter the one? It's like if you
Yeah,
are-
that's what creative AI is.
Okay.
That's what our Ubinsky
Perfect.
did.
What examples of invented AI in the status quo other than Davis?
Sorry?
Like you made claims like the doors and evidence is like it's coming, it's gonna collapse patent law. Besides Davis, what examples are there of invented AI?
Inventive AI. There are creative AI projects now. They're applying for
Right.
patents.
Besides Davis, like what is one?
GPT. I mean, like there are a lot of
GPT is
creative
applying for
AI
patents.
projects. What?
ChatGPT.
We're making a longitudinal claim about how AI could be applied in a patent system.
Right.
You're right that there's not clear examples of that happening in the moment, but that will happen.
You've read this meta evidence about like patent cancellations. Who would have standing to sue for a mislabeled patent?
Companies that could claim that their invention was generated by themselves and not the AI in question.
No, but who would like? You're saying that company B. Would
So
be
let's say like Pfizer and Moderna have their own kind of AI systems,
Yep.
and Moderna claims to patent an AI invention. Moderna will be like Pfizer would be like, well, you didn't generate that
Right,
invention.
but
That was the
Pfizer
AI.
didn't either, right? Why did they have standing?
Well, they would cancel the patent to gain their competitive advantage. They don't want Pfizer to have the patent over something that they could sell.
Okay, it's been sent, it'll be advantage 1, advantage 2. Okay, is everyone good?
Sorry, give me 1 second.
Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
we good.
First off is the nearest person Counterplan U.S. to determine the artificial intelligence assistant inventions are patent eligible by nearest person use of artificial intelligence using a framework for assessing the non-obviousness of the invention, analyzes user control selection, and use of machine learning associated techniques to determine ordinary skill in the art. The Counterplan solves the case by awarding patent rights to an AI user based on their control of the algorithm for implementing the safeguards on reaching AI creativity. The process have met non-obviousness with the AI system inventions in inertia, but differentiating such a weapon invention. If someone with some patentable AI system inventions incorporate the machine learning big or data analysis and system invention operated user focused skill in the use of ML. The AI system invention for it USP2 and reward a human invention with patent rights determining non-obvious determines an error approach focusing on user control selection and use value. This was human non-obvious patent with the event on patent body data developed inventions. Next is the right to decide besting artificial entities with IP rights snowballs into malignant superintelligence extinction query and 17 years about machine humans and human strongness around the corner participating increase in memory processing hardware no longer pose the question about how simply legalistic appears existential scientists are concerned about the full idea development can also spell the end of the human race when superintelligence is prevented from replacing or changing it. Humans may not tolerate creating appearance to the world, solution difference and competitive over a machine's nature. If innovations want to get up, outcome needs to be pursued by law, IP side, and law for the rights to humans. Next is topicality rights. Inventorship is a power, not a right. Trensky and inventorship and ownership are distinct concepts under patent law. Inventorship connotes a power, whereas patent ownership connotes a claim right the power to use and the holder the power to alter the legal position of another. Non-inventors have the liability for the invention of the right until they do together for making, using, or selling subject of the patent. There's no relation between the inventor and patent holder for any invention. Vote NEG 1 is limits power to expose the topic to the ability to sue for any harm, creating infinite liability. As second is precision rights and duties are peer terms, which include other general relations. Sex is the K, extending personhood, locks in corporate control of origin comments, ensuring existential misalignment. Vote negative for a good attractor. Parasitic civilization is in love with humanity, can actually beneficial. Have the best of making would be exponentially to make worth fancy eye and infrastructure weakness and economic system person for corporate projects. Human persons cannot solve the with private news or a corporation solving to be limited corporation with a disregard for the U.S. corporation, German self-preservation, common legal authority, disaster, undefended consequences, German corporation, and development focus. I'm manipulating child promoting the company's aims, most dangerous time to be subject to drive the human out to the limit with this legal person creates automation with control for controls, insufficient to the AI, unless it adopts the danger of future sexual flaws by recognizing artificial person and AI through called misalignment. We need a good tractor. Next is the open source Counterplan. The U.S. should not grant patent rights for inventions developed by artificial intelligence. Abolishing patent protection for AI inventions solves best. There's zero evidence that patents repeated development and only a risk they follow on innovation carbon 20 that patent rationale upon invention machines and rationales about the legal response invention falling into public domain patent law difficult AI inventions innovation better achieve the opportunities for favor making inventions open source track for ethical rules political for sharing information about controlling IP on AI innovation robots technology patent havens detection to follow innovation no critical data sequence data and steps are needed inherent inventions polishing patent production AI inventions be innovation friendly. Next is TAI. AI is distinct from basic automation toward a narrow goal. It requires general intelligence that can autonomously perform the task humans Anderson and Tate has had. It must be exist alongside the celebrities and ability of which computers do these kind of tasks. Not yet the definition only more powerful research but eventually ability to easily do most tasks for humans. The plan best duties and automated systems, not true AI, sponsor and 19 simply automated automated intelligence, automated the system can understand experiences. These systems are able to make AI capabilities most would agree to say about specific near tasks, both negative for limited ground, including near systems disclose the topic to every algorithm or machine in all sectors. It skirts core links about rogue AI shifting the topic to minute sepsis. Next is the remedies. Counterplan. The U.S. Judiciary should prohibit investing artificial intelligence with intellectual property rights bearing capacity. The U.S. should grant artificial intelligence with intellectual property rights bearing capacity via remedial statute. The Counterplan restricts the court's authority over specific constitutional questions, balances judicial power, prevents you can take over and resolves legitimacy. Precedent is ambiguous now. In what case would spill over Fridman and 20 Congress private jurisdiction led to the power to choose meeting constitutional powers by ordering legislative constitution was self-legitimate constitution judicial review again. The Congress needs to take back from the court's never spoken to fully legislative power of the judicial power over the time percent the should be hard to the judicial power to present to the parties second federal courts for every Congress delegating agencies controlling the agenda. The Congress said GP blocking from the pushing through free fashion judiciary to partisan political to establish qualified judicial power. The political rights to become interpretive authority for Congress says it's more perfect than the authority of Congress has more little power to restrict it. It's not me the political should tweak it. It would establish a democratic and counterforce judicial overreach cause extinction future 20 hope the food states go right now with the biggest problem pandemic economic crisis health climate change terrorism immigration pressing issues for humanity and life on earth that it will fall for judges and limitations on the part of the couple lose confidence in judges and go too far America's rules linked to the world affairs American officers make the engine led to a great scientific achievement. Next is the spillover to sad legal person. It is narrow and will not be expanded beyond humans. The plan reverses that failure 22 a legal person who says legal rights and duties they possess legal capacity related to the court's match to the bedrock of interpretation court found that they would elect the same corporation form of humans courts have if it receptive to non-human legal capacity. Rapid precedent shifts undermine the legal foundation for denying broad personal claims spills over to transgenics and germ-like engineering curriculums of teaching transmitted but to the human essence qualities of more global society she equal to the substance of humans and the human species that do not generate the she influence of genes that has on the future a generation membership of the human species essentially human rights legal system based in Europe physical descent rights of any human human or genetic personal judgment just social and make status quo consequences escape from American jurisprudence we take for granted for most of the existing present ways conservative scaffold facility solution without regards and be rebuilt legal system as relates to person notions about a person to track with the genetics of open safety is person divided and the genetic engineering flow existing precedent would not require remand with the current legal system that causes a broad spectrum of genetic augmentation which precludes existential mitigation and segment society into biological caste that outweigh extinction Hari and 17th law recognizes the personal rights and the status of every if you in the algorithm you can see the authority will shift beyond people become modern and with it genetic technology integrated live this up and microbial habits and elections will become obsolete to try to physical biological instance more than computer science algorithms are organism algorithms of people constitute small elite the upgraded humans will lead to inferior caste splitting of will destroy liberals and the discharging the system of use system of third class species. Next the case all levels of pharma innovation are strong now habit and 22 US states according to pharma innovation as well we want to know into market or policies page of the episode regulation investments or numbers are in 10,000 and 80 since 459 drug revenue high the firms acquired the speed of purple mergers great pools of info enhancing innovation disease does not cause extinction health state and 20 pathogen like also when stage 2 that's the way voting so many evidence the base rate versus so the average non close and constituents of minority and was the only member of some randy the only Christmas selling user general conspiracy risk and capable response to indirect meaning menu special lower restraints medicine and sanitation limit damage AI does not invent Strauss and 21A reports and track clinical service by NET journalists who mentioned they group trained a model they applied a new model and required complex systems by the group that found out kind of virtual AI loan to assist and have to be taken up the technological analysis with their side of the procedure required by human scientific present methods employing AI to scale research autonomous unpredictable self-learning based on open evaluation actual capabilities and most advanced robots and superficial understanding of perception service sci-fi and sensational press announcements no innovation impact code in 20 public health environment ensuring to the innovation including the flex waste money and landmarks by the chair picking square to receive innovation is always good or we understand innovation direct consequences good bad effects and all of those until sure courses of complex and lesson the weeds of innovation software taken for granted policymakers selected innovation direction taken for granted more innovation better understanding the absence of informed policy no emerging tech impact gradualism Chester and ancient history tech consequences dilemmas and technology with the promise of having tax have negative consequences for the emerging technical consequences and changing policy but the confidentiality and what have contradictory effects and siblings and conditions siblings and other factors mitigating effects geography material power strategy domestic politics and culture advantage to patent laws adaptable and stable accommodates AI records 21 technologies and assist to business corporation regarding revolution legal to combination responding and predicts and magic warfare and say his American sale president hyperology manifests insertions that technology can open the patent system the patent system of the adaptable company new technology company MLC to the solution of the patent auction becoming biotechnology solution tried everybody gets to concern regarding patent state for control to patent law patents fully potential compensation with some matter combination of true times causation not a new charge not AI specific strong IP is a crapshoot couldn't anything the same problem as crapshoot but it just forever between the two whatever not very good system without having system operate if you put a place in US system of federal willing to provide uncertainty all jobs over being home to loss of cases but expensive in the cases but willing to tell them no really last all patent law be swallowed the conceptual requirement is not unchangeable it's flexible USPTO has changed it many times to recognize the evolutionary tech biotech is incremental and viral outweigh existing warning emerging going with this will be interesting conception was required by the strategic logic feature code to eliminate predictable level when emerging tech with unpredictable level hypothetical stream is equally about trajectories, and waiting to spot only misleading is confusion done. And so much whether children be back for there's no ability to predict it is simply non-existent. For regulation of CRISPR is either sufficient to solve our UK and Chinese development thumbs. There are too many barriers to use AI leadership as Brazilian patents are swapped by Lord Traveros Cooper in 22 that about embodied AI will emerge from data privacy regulations. The Chinese people develop the country's technology industry, making digital into the kitchen and emerging manufactured by private support for the money US. Except the possibilities of global leadership, with groups in the government and patents and approved China called the US with separate demand, including the higher education best health film across the board, large PC and technical courts, China start working the AI, the current introductory favor US lead. Inventorship does not alter financial science, IP, NET, any patent must include the individual manufacturer successful leads with the inventor and invention continuing capability of inventorship is spent in reducing weak force and human hands to value material burn expenses, of course, will not well published operating defense and infringement design into consideration ability person to shall be minimized, assuming the rest of the patent laws functioning financial incentives will in place to make sure the innovation being set the nominal credits verified and voice contracting freely for those rights, independent patent laws to maintain sufficiency posing and naming does not. PAEs are benign, Cooper and 13 corporations depending patent subsidiaries sold to 3 MPs that make money by listing over 1995 sold with more details now. The MPs included the as on the list of laws to be employed by financial and distributed consumer influence obstacle to innovation companies specialized in niche research requiring the same capital behind her, reducing incentives while technologies to pronounce patent owners control that and lots of companies drive economic growth. Patent law offers protection against these all costs are equal for practicing entities not only 13 money or to spend no common system that makes certain behaviors more costly than by the trust from Lincoln and was greater litigation on average separate survival cost short aggravated patents reducing costs and tools such monetization otherwise being worse basic litigation not seeing unique to roles practicing entity can at least be costly.
I'll send this to you.
Nice.
You all sent it, right? Okay, I just got it.
Oh yeah, I just got this one. Yeah.
All right, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, so plan vests intellectual property rights in artificial intelligence. Is it your claim that intellectual property rights are not rights?
The power says that it is an action taken in relationship with the owner. So ownership is a right, but inventorship is
So
not.
intellectual property rights are not rights, but they're just powers.
It's not a vested right, no. It's a power.
So what card do you think defines vests?
I mean, intellectual property rights. So the Trinsky card talks about inventorship and ownership, that even though they are under the threshold of international intellectual property rights, that inventorship is a power. The intellectual property right comes from the right to ownership. It makes a distinction between the two.
The nearest person counterplan, does the counterplan revise the conception requirement such that any natural person user of an invention can claim that they are the inventor?
So it doesn't be a revision of the conception requirement, but uses a framework for assessing the obviousness of the invention, that if it is non-obviousness, it would satisfy the conception.
So I'm asking about advantage two. So we say that if we touch the conception requirement, we violate the idea that it has to be a business idea that is the progenitor generated by the person who's claiming the invention. It'll basically destroy the patent system. What do you claim to solve this advantage, and if so, how?
Yes, by the second plank of the counterplan that uses a framework for assessing the non-obviousness of the invention. It can recognize that the AI did conceive of the invention, but because the invention is not obvious, it can still be patented under this framework that the counterplan beyond.
So these are conflated two different things. So there's a non-obviousness requirement, which is that the invention has to be non-obvious to someone who is in the relevant domain. And there's another requirement, which is the conception requirement, which that has to be conceived by that person. So
requirement has been changed, which our evidence says it is adaptable to the evolution of technology. So it can recognize that while AI can conceive, it does not satisfy, or it still satisfies the obviousness standard, even if it doesn't satisfy current interpretations of what is conception.
I'm disputing the first premise, which is that in the status quo, AI can conceive. Like, that is not something the court holds now.
So
Did you
again, we
rely
read
on that
evidence that
premise for
AI
this kind of
can't
work?
conceive, but conception is flexible, which means if AI can conceive, the
Okay.
AI that conceives the invention can still be
We
found.
disagree with conception.
Yeah.
I think that's-
I want to ask about the rights creep spill over DAs that rely on the plan spilling over to a broader legal personality for artificial intelligence. Both of them.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And this market misalignment, K. What exactly is linked to the AFF? Where we said that AI must be held by corporations only.
We think that granting personhood results in it being held by corporations.
Okay, so this one also relies on expanding to seeing AI as a legal person.
Well, we think rights are sufficient, and the evidence speaks to that. We use it.
We'll take that.
Sorry, did you read everything on case and then those two cards as well?
I read everything.
Okay, all right, I'll stop it. 4, 6.
Sorry. 553.
The fire. I think the doc just did not save.
I didn't say it.
I don't know what just happened. It just closed. It didn't save. Sorry, give me. Hang on. Sorry, give me 1 second. I just
It's okay, man. Don't worry
the
about
doc didn't save.
So what do you
I closed it.
what did you have?
Do you have like auto save or auto recover?
Yeah, I probably did, but it just.
Oh, well, yeah, obviously.
I mean, I just closed it and it didn't give me an opportunity to save it. It just closed it.
Okay, well, we'll just take that. So,
Okay, sorry. Let me just. Stop.
We've got to take it.
Let's see if it lets me save this time. I bet it did.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm sending it. Should be sent.
Don't worry about that.
That's not what happened there. Just didn't even give me an opportunity to save it. All right. Okay. What else going to be the innovation advantage, the conception advantage, TAI, T rights, the judicial, or well, the nearest person kind of plan, the open source kind of plan, or sorry, scratch that. T, the critique, nearest person, the open source kind of plan, judicial remedies kind of plan, the rights creep DA, and the gene editing DA. Yeah, sure. So it's TAI, T rights, nearest person kind of plan, the open source kind of plan, the judicial remedies kind of plan, the rights creep DA, and this gene editing DA. Sorry, I realized I forgot the critique. It's first in order, not critique. So K, then everything is good.
The innovation advantage, no form of innovation now. It's not AI, which is the key internally. Bakhtiari lists a host of things that only artificial intelligence do. Yes, and disease causing change is most recent qualifying concludes as risk is rapidly increasing the status quo due to globalization, massive transportation, and increasing resilience. Yes, AI invention. There's an article that says that they exist now, or the examples like ChatGPT, and there's a rapid advance in computing, which will make it inevitable. Yes, innovation of Bakhtiari is generic, not specific to the pharmaceutical in context of necessity tech to solve emerging tech, the threats. Yes, emerging tech impact close innovation goes like such from open emerging tech only openness and collaboration enables object collective advantage to maintain it. The conception advantage, the no path law is not inevitable. Dorn says AI is unique because of ability creation, which uniquely challenges conceptual harmony. ID being weak now is uniqueness for the affirmative and the necessity to recognize inventorship between conception not being unchangeable with result above it's uniquely damaging the artificial intelligence concept. Yes, biotech represents a factor in advancing invent innovations and technological advancements would make you likely. Yeah, the foreign regulation the foreign regulation needs to be US led, which is or is specific to our AI leadership doesn't apply to this affirmative. It's a question of the US adopting disease disease and pharmaceutical innovation, which spills over globally. Yes, innovation get intervention is fundamental financial incentive, but only we have a bit specific to the pharmaceutical context, which is the UNESCO read evidence that yes, PEs are uniquely damaging. Empirical consensus goes affirmative, the helpful IT consensus of studies that demonstrate that the uniquely damage innovation AI1 we meet plan the plan guys the best right creative AI which interpretation that's the prominent evidence. Two we meet plan takes vacuum question of true versus simple AI mixes versus three counterplantation AI means algorithms operating human like human other statistics person back in 19 AI is brought set of methods algorithms technology that make software team human like observation to consider AI is usually the ability to forecast human station make ability to review discern the information predictability. There's no agreed upon definition of AI turns national these higher in 21 societies acknowledge no commonly accepted definition of AI exists because of the diverse approaches to research in field that no official definition exists and it is provided definition of AI for purposes there any official subject functional prefer functional limits small machine learning absolute instantly spill over my ears person feasibility good enough and you risk of limit screens and then race to the bottom of the T rights.
We mean plain text of asking AI would be vested in intellectual property rights over the plan, but that would be then to transfer the order about that. The transfer process is not fiat by the plan, but it's standard is for any employee that claims by the plan system and transferred over to the employer. And once they read a violation, we get new answers. Once they read a violation, we get new answers. The critique. One framework, the NEG explain actions or representations that's key to predictable resolution, otherwise justifies infinite political place. 2, extinction outweighs loss of all life on the planet and impact with infinite magnitude. 3, permutation to both 4, the alternative feels and has inevitable. The alternative fiats it all the way, then it's utopian, that's a voting issue of fairness, class back in our justification. 5, no link and link term. We can say the corporation must retain control over AI, but short-term pharmaceutical investments are good to prevent extinction. The judicial remedies Counterplan. 1, permutation to vote shields because it overrides the mandate of the counterplan with the plan. 2, permutation to counterplan. 3, perm. 3, perm. The text is inserted in the doc. The text is inserted in the doc. Limited intrinsics is good to check to ensure germinates and net benefits. 4, conflicts must be textually, functionally competitive. Anything else otherwise, veto, Chico, hurts, clash, narrative, fine. Those spill over AI is not politically contentious subject. There's no reason why Chico wants no application of judicial overreach or why overreach in this specific area is key. 6, there's no impact rule of laws violated. Multiple lies over. There's no reason why that equips us for pandemics. The nearest person counterplan. 1, permutation to vote shields, the permutation to the counterplan, and worse is current uncertainty, ace conception, double down, conception, almost conception of the doctor by decoupling, invention of right ownership, which avoids finance if it's stored, it opens up space for free riders and falsely claiming benefit, which results in litigation, panic, installation, which spills over to patent, joint invention, biotechnology, and hope, harmonics, impossible, carve-outs are impossible, limit cause body floods, that's an sort of exception, but deception, exception, developer, always in matters, for decades, the person, knowledge, solutions, sort of regard, inventive fraud, you know, companies that but you guys have developers, what if it's such a contrary, what about issues, development, AI, doctrinal, distortion, the whole innovation, go away, United States, turn on them, reach your actions, we almost like, we're going to sort of like, by for future potential relatively back. Invisible efficient critics exists with critical evils does not send a person away for everything out of all decided disability and evaluate. Presented back then it's one of our adversary or recently altogether, especially true form versus dispute the ambiguity, AFF forming the lab, which is awkward as on and those 23 conception horizon. AI use exploit for people to develop a license to form a company, identify understanding messages, avoids a license provides accreditation to research from not narrow approaching holding space ability should be vendors by Warmer. We're not going to be licensed AI in the first place, agree to risk them, please license later, vendors and problem contract low, it's a game contract, and it should be as payees and actions necessary to shift the ecosystem away from binary cross-licensing, open edition, empirical consensus demonstrates that the largest barrier to disruptive innovation that's spoken, handle clarity, accountability necessary to resolve payees, upstream and smelting, and 16, factual cycling innovation, and by preventing bad for allowed for the first place, the strong cannot obtain no ambiguous runners, use weapons, property, only strong innovation, not sure perform not likely to reduce the ability to prepare defense to settle and reset, judge about score for government, social responsibility for litigation, settle and also companies, 30 servers, all of which is resort tools of biggest one, and also determine ability. So such great as the open source Counterplan, permutation to both, permutation Counterplan, and can't solve patents are uniquely key, decades of research will be more like economics, prove patents, road, excellent innovation, and knowledge, dissemination helps, even if it lasts 50 years, other than economics, the both sides on the innovation, premium, the substantial numbers, 50% of real world economics, confirmed by biggest leadership of the country, BC, biotech, will be strong, the basic patent innovation, more effective tools, 180% of the system, relevant, but it's supposed to give you so that advances, no patent, advantage, every percent of the regard to service, and short robotics are widely to maximize your products, so the tech chain, most comprehensive global analysis, key tech and specifically prove their studies, the number quality type of advanced worship, and 20 economic, controversial. Previous research comes from their border down with the technical quality benefits related to the time using innovative areas such as we less relevant technical less and also for some research only on the key tech factors for shows significant relationship with Russian are all EU and Asia 1%. Here's result in an increase of 0.10% 8% of GDP example responsible to 22 trillion GDP. The counterplan is especially damaging the pharmaceutical context because it destroys the possibility for data collaboration in between pharma and tech companies, which is uniquely key to innovation. The rights strip DA1, there's no link. A, the plan does a specific membership right to solely created by which doesn't require person that's for B. Rights group is wrong party circular grants rights on a contextual basis from claim to claim that's wrong. It's especially true for AI. This game is sort of a like no crazy like it's a corporation on protection against someone represented like AI is not even as with national artificial examining level machine rights making more certainly not making AI national percent allow them more natural so I have the garden to be the rights for AI can the existing legal framework not only we're going to set advise the rights legal office of C legal provisions check this game into what is it by execution follow how like the whole of always determined by judicial analyze an issue not person but such a presentation corporation was afterwards not making rights must be represented local laws not signing always possible to decision or certification or the reverse of the recognized AI as a legal object that can invent that's a limited principle basis dollar and towards the work towards how legal such as you know AI would be in the quality of the ability for both companies to apply by allowing inventorship that there's not like I believe no legal version means AI is a special legal object that the ability to invent there's no reason rights are achieved or tech advances proved hard to prove if AGI exists if it's inevitable but there's no AGI that's on earth and it's good that 22 lack of evidence success in creating general AI not something you know requires about the memory of computers, they require hallucination, the most practical problems in science, and also adopting models that allows for engineering AI that are ability to intelligent speculations, which are unique with the result of using my factor. The access is the only cheap only with the define patents, like assumption the ability that the user is not enables to knowledge to recognize obstacles, computers not will not acknowledge the unconscious of the asset of it, we were being observed and eventually all analogous interference in the inference responsible for the fact that That's the computer that consciously the ideas of natural biology of the mind is operated like machine mind modeling competency for living humans and possible because of overground machines and on by technology way. But math and the mistakes of binary sheet binary and negative one that get us not closer to general algorithm exists. The gene editing you said there's no spillover, all of that goes above, and the AFF is a comparatively larger internal link to gene editing. CRISPR edit and the editing is inevitable in the status quo, but only US led norms on it and international norms on it can stop its proliferation. That was the proliferation. That was the second advantage. We have anything else? And AI matters exist now, genius key rapid, and we're not talking about AI already here. We have generative vectors without humans and without human generating testing forecast or read about rapid vision, part about full range of discovery, direct based on already discovered humans are not developed with AI forecasting no toxicity and creative speed without human. We're not going to AI, don't say anything.
Maybe you could just read these two cards. Actually. I guess we can read these just to support the
Okay, sure. Other creative AI exists now that's officer introducing example ones and early examples of like fundamentally neurological, biological, because there's also responsible for idea formation, see knowledge about information, ideas, millions of ideas, capable of generating novel, obviously useful ideas. In AI can't conceive now, we'll soon AI are rapidly approaching similar. Understand how not person can take a change and foreshadows potential behind the development models, so they associate to be alpha fully completed jobs and rapid form. Others are done profoundly effective medicine and bio.
Let me send those cards out.
Yeah, I can send them.
While you send, I'll take touch. That was 10 seconds.
Alright, the card I read should be sent from Kevin sent me the other two.
Yeah, I sent those.
Yeah.
I'm good.
You good?
Yeah.
Process?
Okay, I got the first question.
Yeah.
What was the term that was supposedly in the doc? I don't think I see it on remedies.
Oh, I think Kevin can send the judicial. The remedies perm?
Yeah, like was there one in the doc
Um,
that I'm missing?
yeah, let me just, okay, I'll just send text edit. That wasn't sent.
Okay.
Okay, the case, what are examples of AI conceiving of an invention?
Sure,
You say ChatGPT, they just take into account all the information on the internet and kind of spit it back.
Sure, I mean, the cards we read specifically substantiate other examples such as IBM Watson, DeepMind that are generating novel, non-obvious ideas, and the other card we read.
What did they generate?
Yeah, they generate like all sorts of inventions that can be generalized.
So
to
the Miller card that you sent out just says that AI inventors can approach. Are there inventions that exist in the status quo that would satisfy conception?
I mean, I think the offshore card is pretty explicit, and even if CM and Watson are not exactly generative AI, that they're at the very least early examples, and the Miller card substantiates that advances in computing will make it so that they're inevitable and that they're approaching.
Okay, that makes sense. The spillover part on both of the dissides, the first re-highlighting you inserted says that you can grant like explicit or implicit rights to ensure that the right is limited. What right does the plan grant to ensure that there is a clear demarcation between what is a human and what is a robot?
Solely that of inventorship. The Fridman card specifically substantiates how that would only generate.
So nothing in the plan fiats that is limited, correct? So how can you guarantee that the right that you grant means that property rights aren't granted, ownership rights?
Well, sure. I mean, that gets to the spillover debate. All our cards substantiate how the court, in its history of jurisprudence vis-a-vis personhood, has approached rights on a case-by-case and contextual basis. We're just contesting
So the King evidence is about corporate personhood. Why would this be true in the context of AI?
Well, sure. The King evidence, even if it's about corporate personhood, it's broadly substantiating that the court has already considered questions of personhood now, and that in the case of corporate personhood, the court has established distinctions between natural persons and artificial persons, which means that, considering AI an inventor wouldn't be a new thing, or like some groundbreaking precedent, but rather bring AI into this bifurcation the law has already created.
Okay, sure. The nearest person counterplan
Yeah.
conception requirement. I guess, what is the conception requirement and why would the status quo, like interpretations, violate?
Sure. I mean, the conception requirement just says that inventors need to have a substantial knowledge about the inventors they created. It's extension of their mind. The reason that
So does the AFF like revise the conception requirement?
it extends inventorship to artificial intelligence. The reason that it's being hard, Dorn is hard to substantiate that the reason it's being strained out is because AI itself is generating
So
inventions.
it says that current AI does not satisfy conception because it does not conceive. If AI can conceive, it would then satisfy conception.
Well, we read cards that substantiate that AI is conceiving now, but
So it's just like in order for you to win that argument, you have to win that AI conceives, correct?
not necessarily.
950. Also, there was not theory, correct?
Sorry?
No theory.
No.
No, yes, there was.
Oh, what?
Oh, it is just.
Limited intrinsicness,
Yeah.
must be functionally textually competitive.
Okay, yeah, but no reason to reject the argument, Martin.
Utopian alt decay.
They might not be that reason. Responsive. They are that reason.
748, I'm sending.
It's like, yeah. Because it's not helping you wait. Yeah. What do you do?
It's sent. Let me write that down.
I would just, in fact, actually, insult to say something is not a reason to reject
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I like that. Exactly. Everything.
Everything is said. I've seen people say that. I feel like they'll snap.
Speech.
If you're watching this, consider this.
Want to go for future debates. Consider this as a strategy.
Everyone good for an order?
Yeah.
Okay. T rights. Remedial statute counterplan. Open source counterplan. Nearest person counterplan. Advantage 1, advantage 2.
T rights.
Then the remedies counterplan.
Remedies counterplan.
Then open source. Then nearest person. And then case, advantage 1, 2. Everybody good?
Just give me a sec.
Okay. Good?
Yeah.
Great.
Tabula grasp of the affirmative rights and not powers, they cannot simply bring the possibility of liability, which is hopeful evidence. Refer 1 is limits their interpretations any liability as in creating infinite affirmatives, expanding the rights to over whatever issue. 2, position on inference ground in legal literature from both sides. Color, the rights to finding rights and duties. No counter interpretation. We read evidence that specifically said ownership is not a power, which means there's no winning. 2, 1 AR or trigger on the first was planted to vacuum. It's bad. 1, infinitely aggressive laws. Every affirmative on the team copy use the resolution wording of plain text. 2, vagueness. Instead of seems just read the resolution specified. The 2 C counter interpretation tagging process, which is best to choose how to characterize their affirmative. We base it on the 1C choice on that characterization. Should you compose 1C? Instead of it seems to lie in process is negative strategy. I'll prep the offense does not incentivize vagueness. Seems to know there would be punishable or peace and worse. Judge understanding. Now the second thing which is not fiated by the plan. This is wrong. The plan must give inventorship, which is not solved because all their evidence is about inventorship, which is the tags and processing above. But 2, it's otherwise there's no way to solve the fact that they say rights is not the fact they say inventive rights. It's just a reason this sentence is back. The last thing they say we did not read a violation. That's wrong. Read the 1C evidence. It specifically says that AI inventorship would not be one. I'm going to read more cards to be clear. They do not get new answers in the 1C. It's the same argument. Inventorship is power, not right. C. The 3, inventorship is the final laws. Inventorship cannot power rights of the ownership of the powers used in the holder of the legal position of another law inventor liability inventors of the right until it makes it using something such as the patent. There's no legal issue with the inventor of the patent holder for any invention. The right to exclude, but if the ability to exclude, patenters could choose number first patent. Michael's 18. The patent holders patent on the power to give the right to exclude remedies. And obviously no patent check, no remedies. The counterplan solves and competes as the courts ban the affirmative, then fias the counterplan grants a remedy granting equivalent enforcement without explicitly vesting as a substantial right. Courts acquiescing to the remedial statutes since a new precedent that expands congressional authority to interpret the Constitution and limit judicial overreach. Thus, swing evidence. A correct and mistaken common law resulting in action that is practically indistinct from the affirmative, but competes. It never vests a right. Coleman 62. Since the procedural rights of our remedials distinguished from substantive remedial, those rights of to religious common laws arise from the circumstantial mistake that judge and other causes of legal remedies. Somebody's going to invest in a statute that outweighs unmeant to scope. A hyperpolarized Supreme Court locks in governance failures to prevent response to transnational challenges like pandemics, migration, terrorism, all of which are essential. That's featured top level. 2 and C, no solid steps. If the 2 must be competition, any one re-explanation is new. It should be immediately struck off below. It's the NDT, blocks it based on the 2 C mistakes. Independently, this turn case 1 is solvency. The judiciary is aggressively limiting access to rights of remedies, usurping political function of Congress. Rest of 3. Let's look at the branch of the federal judicial authorities and the jurisdiction of the power of the Congress develop new rights and sources of judges not going to remedies, presumption against federal remediation, show the right judiciary is blocking Congress regenerative to be innovation as the judges continue to watch arguing against new rights. Congress constantly from judicial legitimacy is unright because the police lobbyists invite advocates to its position. 2, the independent favor yourself in the proper grounds. The judiciary enables effective dominance that assaults every threat, including the external judicial obstruction. 0 solves the otherwise framing. Defaults to that's it. Does not waive every independent and judge kicking the contemplative logical extent of conditionality. First, supreme to both does not shield an evidence internal override the contemplative not solving the internal benefit. 1, mutually exclusive. The contemplative against banning the plan is not possible to both vest and not vest the right. 2, conflict. The internal benefit is premise of the courts agreeing, acquiescing, in a genuine conflict. The firm fiasco of the disagreement and functions of the courts just enforcing something that they help pass. 3, functionality. Correcting judicial mistake is key. There's no remedy in the world of harm. You'll single debate. Read a section of active defect. Read a section of select defects and breach of rules and common laws from mistakes of judges. 4, solvency. The best of the firm sense missed signals unminding ourselves. No one here clarification. The permutation cannot be based on sequencing or additional shift. They only imagine a world with both the plan and the counterplan, which is literally going to happen. Second part of the counterplan, it severs. 1, the first mandate of the plan counterplan is to ban the plan that is mutually exclusive with doing the plan. The counterplan never undoes the ban. The never results in the act anyway. 2, severs vest. Vesting rights is given them via remedy. Power 16. With the collective special remedial such as the court required whether granting a special remedy because the right into the negative remedial special remedial such as all the actions of the penalty of not vest of the job that's the right of the individual whenever is reference remedial such as the right is not vested. Creating a statutory remedy is the same for vesting right. 148. The such remedy is not vested by the maybe amendment or abolished jurisdiction goes entirely on the common plaintiff certain does not is vested right. We cannot agree with the essence of comments of the market for the Constitution of the not vested right. Such a remedy is more than mere expectation of its own activity. This is a continuous of the law comments and being agreed remedies by the no vested right exists after continued remedy comments fit to abrogate. This is consensus along the long list of courts and cases for net 38. The sometimes being the vested remedies HCC no election noise set up different remedies. There's no vested right remedy CJ volume 12 remedy not a vested right editor versus Tanko and no vested right any remedy people versus recording cannot the word vested remedy New Jersey County versus Black remedy not substantive the D hand versus hotel and restaurant employees prefer vested the court check on the resolution rights and duties are bidirectional. There's no limit on topic subsets. Means try or die for legal message and that ground. 3, independent of those definitions. There's no explanation for the presentation that's at all coherent. The second plate cannot be vesting a right because the first plate denies doing so. The conflict cannot result in the ass. Severance is a voting issue that makes the after moving target. Reference like the something to conflict competition, experience, education. The third point, you should obviously not give to them. You not say verb. It's in the email, not describe it whatsoever, and then send out afterwards and encourages sandbagging and debate and encourages sandbagging and then debate. Either way, I'll enter just we say enter the firm does not solve. Congress has created remedies in a class. What makes the conflict unique is a controversy from remedy over something that's just denied by the judiciary. The firm does not create that conflict. Does not deny banning vest or does not deny vesting or banning vesting. Independently, it's not clear what duties are for doing the firm tax. They do not reward them for having a leg plan. It's illegitimate either way. 1, filter based through common term to the counterplan. If you win the counterplan, it's distinct from the affirmative, doesn't have benefit, then it should be legitimate. Insurance firms are bad. They should not get to add things to permutation. The counterplan is distinct. 2, counterplans is textually and functionally competitive if yes, denying the act. 3, but counterplans only have to be functionally competitive. That limits the most abusive counterplans like word fix and delay. These permutations cannot be functionally true that theirs is because as the function of claiming remedies for something that's not the app. It's best. A, background. How does the app I think to be able to test the process since the court how would be B, logic analyze permutation to ban the plan, which goes even opposite counterplans. the impacts of predictability, having unpredictable rules is worse than none at all. C, word games, invented counterplans can be sliced together, even deleted into new actions as long as there's enough material. D, real world individual wording specifics do not side things overarching action. 2, E, limited truthfully, this is definitely aggressive. They only shift the goal left for what instance they get. There's no difference between this and permanent both, so you can cross every answer. Either way, conflict deficit, cross line from permanent both, this breaks will be vested, which means there'll be no controversy. This is not solved. There is also no deficit. There's no reason to vote on this. Now, the nurse deliver evidence. This is wrong. First, is our evidence is hyper specific. The 1C Fridman evidence is one case would be enough to spill over. Second is clarifying remedies affect the broader structure of the Constitution. The logical content will over to other questions. Here it's an NDT. Question remedy affect the practical impact of certain rules of the Constitution of the structure of the version affect the application of rules. The logic can be used by the answers to many other questions be friendly in the remedies. Either way, there's no deficit. It doesn't matter. Finally, the impact even stuff does not matter because it's not a deficit. But this is not our impact. We're going to miss about judicial obstruction, which is not something they answer. Evidence of this rule of law and says there will be challenges like climate change which will not be able to be solved if the conservative court always blocks them. They drop a laundry list of those impacts. I'd name them in the overview. Other way, legitimacy under international institutions credibility, the conquest of global war, Null is 9. No parts of the U.S. matter, ensure the stability of uniform parliamentary, the province, peaceful, legitimate, sovereign, religion, must be legitimate, literacy, system, and application, share, speak, courts, or simple to the operations, but the one to develop idea depends on functioning of the government, the no other made in the major nation, capable of resolving backbones, really major worthy result, mean dominant, the capability of preservation depends on the literacy, the system, the courts, and of stable interpretation, to leave a little branch of legitimacy important for effective use of FOPO, or research Counterplan can see the perm not going for it, any theories argue not team, Counterplan, nearest person Counterplan can see the permutation not going for it, theories argue not team. First, the internal link to pharma is AI is key for mapping, spread, and creating predictive models, not developing new drugs. Inventive is not key for those specific things. Either way, innovation is strong and accelerating the drug publishing is full. Brian 22. Current macro, the very large on the farm, the computer strong with the examining other amazing key building the strategies and investors will hope for macro this year. The rally of innovation lessons means either the 100 next in the buyer, the region, the pipeline, intensive diversity, continue to sell the technical breaking structure, fundamentals remain strong on many fronts. Now, there is no disease impact. Your answer is this about one line, not answer any of the warrants of a Halsted evidence. 200,000 years, repeating the worst outbreaks in over close, extinctive and interconnectedness, increase in immunity, which is the only warrant. Plus, preventatives and reactive measures are widespread. That's all said. The risk is low, 1%, no way 22. But if the extinction is very small, the probability of the GCR, the competition of the BDI server, 1 to 5%, or that's the probability of from the minimum use 3.1%. At kind of related trends in lethality, virulence proof, it's impossible, or 20. Zero biological theories such as pathogen on the leader with disabilities and with antivirulation infections, lethality, extreme rarity, and the kill times more violent than the more the virulent, less optimal virulence, the civilization of recovered for the death of no specific classes, like we can do future events, even global strong disease and possible record source above 0.1% in general, how long humanity has. Lots of it. Also, the AI does not invent they say it's ChatGPT. There's no examples of crossings of people applying for patents and they invent now, but no one's applying for them. There's no reason to key. The co-ed evidence, all this says it's a generic to not assume pharma 1, but evidence about pharma above. But no innovation to backdrop. All these warrants on service or at least has highs, upsets, trying to ramp it up, increases the risk of accidents and failures. So they said it's good, it's inevitable, but no happens over time. It's unaffected by one-shot policies like the plan. No impact to emerging technologies. Their only answer was close. Oh, it's good. They answered none of the warrants. First, empirically, people thought the airplane was going to bring apocalypse. Evidence is hyperbolic. 2, it doesn't produce text. That's positive negative effects we cannot see. Assuming everything's essential, it's absurd. That's sure. Other countries slum, other countries don't. I'll be that AI find the patent tools stuff. They answered an issue. I'm never here. There's no impact of patent tools. Evidence not assume licensing, which is that like it's still used and royalties are limited, not prohibited. They do not increase litigation nor impact innovation. Data proves zero back more of the team. This is a radio and being aggressive in the case of and a case of not government very similar producers who were the individuals who were the that means ever heard about the procedure and litigation, but then the complementary of fisher and haggle the fan quality and be the least the same quality, if not better, then shoot. First is the patent system adaptable, and all they say is Jordan says is unique. Our evidence specifically answers AI. The Berg evidence says AI, and AI is nothing new, and this gives other warrants. First, IPR is adaptable, claims new tech-destroying patents have been around for centuries and always is proven. But there's no internal link. Patent applications would not happen because nobody would have standing. This is one C cross-sex. Even if Pfizer thought Moderna did not truly develop a drug, they also did not develop the drug, so they could ask you to cancel the patent. There's only risk. They have undermined the patent system, which is worse. Either way, the patent system is laughable. Judges are incompetent, residents constantly conflicting. There's zero certainty in the status quo. That's Quinn. Zero the advantage. It's a series around patent law broadly, not AI, which is terminally thumb. Their only answer was that AI is uniqueness. Our evidence does not say AI, it's other warrants, all of which good job. Finally, there's no impact to biotech. It's not rapid enough, and it cannot be scaled up. And there's infeasible large scale, really heavily regulated. Carry 19. So because the biotech proposed an expert, however, many second means to start institutional find already gets into research of research to maintain officer risks of psychological remediation of and also there's consistent regulation means important regulation. We have to speed up the second, which is the bridges on the product rather than the process on suitable frameworks discouraged by. I'm good. Oh, one card on the Counterplan is at the top of case, but it's in the back. There's 2 and C, IL 18.
Okay, are you good?
Yeah.
I want to start with T rights. So you read evidence that inventorship is a power, not a right. What other affirmatives would be justified under this power?
Yeah. So the difference between power and rights are automatically enforced. Power, you have the choice to enforce it. So theoretically, someone could invalidate, an person's patent, and they could do nothing about it. Plus, there's a distinction of owner, inventor, which is like, even if they wanted to, the human is the owner.
I'm confused why that still doesn't make it a right. Even if the patent is invalidated, the initial right is still conferred.
Because we have read a definition that says rights must be self-enforced. Inventorship is not.
I mean, the Perlman evidence is specific on how the courts would establish a test on whether or not to give a right. I'm confused on why
Right.
that's not.
They establish a test to give inventorship, and then we think inventorship is a power. The fact that courts establish inventorship does not mean people automatically enforce their inventorship.
Well,
That's
I'm just
the
confused on what other affirmatives this would possibly justify. You've read one card about patent systems.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
just
I
confused.
mean, I'll pull up. I didn't put the case list in because there's no counter chirp, so even if it allows no apps, there's no other option. But I'll pull up the case list. First, rights of nature that would be enforced via regulatory standards. Contract rights for AI, because those are automatically enforceable. Animal
Contract rights for AI.
Yes.
You think that's an affirmative? Like, who's writing about contract rights? Like, I mean, that's fine. All right, the judicial remedy counterplan. I'm confused on how perm de both would function. The app happens, the court invalidates it, and then it says the court invalidates it and then re-implements it via remedial statute.
You are making a time frame distinction, right? You're adding a pause.
Why is that the case?
Well, because your explanation was first plan happens, second court invalidates. That is not perm de both. Do both means immediately both happen, right? No one's read definitions that either is not immediate, which means we cannot both vest and not vest immediately. It is mutually exclusive.
Well, I mean,
And it explicitly preempted this one argument, saying you cannot reclarify the delay.
okay, that's fine. I'm confused on the arguments for spillover. So why is overreach in the IP context uniquely key? Like a lot of the arguments about legitimacy concern the perception of like the court can overreach in a number of other areas. Why is
It's spillover in the context of remedies. The Fridman evidence is quite good in the 1C. First, it talks about how there's ambiguity. It says there's currently a circuit split on whether courts or Congress have the ultimate authority over constitutional remedies, and then says that courts have not answered, the Supreme Court has not answered the question, making the claim that one case would be enough to spill over. You're right that, well, I guess you're wrong that our internal net benefit is about IP rights or whatever. It's just that we've made a case that in using remedies in this context would spill over because the Fridman evidence makes that claim. Then I've read another part.
but you've read another impact specific to legitimacy and the perception of legitimacy. I'm confused on why that wouldn't apply to that in that context.
That wouldn't apply to that in that context.
I'm talking about the stuff about IP rights being key.
Why
would that's fine. I guess I'm just confused on how the court is full of conservative justices. Why do you think that a remedial statute would ensure that they wouldn't?
Oh, because the counterplan makes it, like, if he gets a remedial statute, we've read evidence that was not contested, that the result of that would be Congress overriding it and set a precedent that Congress has final say over remedies. So the court, who once blocked things, no longer has the power to use it.
Okay, I'm sending it.
With the shorter.
Yeah. Okay, it's been sent. Yeah, you can actually look.
It should have been brought out. Good talk.
Okay, the order will be the K, the spillover dissad, and then the rights group dissad. Everyone good? Okay, cool. Okay. The K can see the permutation just has competition. We're not going for it. The all theories of reason track the argument of the team. The gene editing dissad not going for it. Rewrite defense to biotechnology. And the 1C, which was extended in the block, but to the extent that they are trying to win an argument, all of the link stuff that I'll do below applies, and they've dropped the impact, which outweighs because decided rabies outweigh war, environment, and all other impacts. Hori says that splits humanity, collapses the world, some that collapses global cooperation. They've dropped uniqueness, so it obviously outweighs, and the link, all of the stuff we do below, obviously will prove that the plan spills over and opens the door to rights claims by genetic engineered humans, which means retaining status quo precedent is key. That was the 1C Franco piece of evidence. The rights group decide broken out ways. One is magnitude of launches genocide against humanity, machine self-propagate, build code robots to accumulate power. Second is shut down fertility and centralizes extreme power, wealth, cause extinction. Building to beams. One, vesting IP rights snowballs into super intelligence. Drop. Hori says it deletes the differences between humans and robots, and that their further rights and duties are quote quote, inevitable outcomes, patent rights are slippery slope, that the slope of the 4% trouble and 20 patent law people's burden is time enough in the human venture was not putting nominated mechanisms, state no ethics, rights to expand the term to venture, lead person controls the AI should be the way to discrimination and technology taking place by themselves, how government needs a person to between the inventor, the current legal system, may not be prepared to handle the patent system that spills over to unforeseeable legal outcomes, but when 21 to see inventor to be human depending on the way to respond, Lewis could open their opening against an equal footing with humans could also have some impacts on human law privacy and involve legal modifications, so all areas and it can make it impossible for it to make patent at one point overtake all, but it's not yet. Second, it is not limited. Is the point they've inserted this highlighting nothing about the plan Fiat's an explicit or implicit right that draws a line at Fiat's quote intellectual property rights bearing capacity for further rights of ownership, property, and standing, which is all established by the cards we've read. Second is the king evidence. You should group it. It's about corporate personhood, which is not the plan. It's not legal personhood to AI. A case by case basis to grant rights is not true in the context of inventorship. It confers dangerous and unnecessary rights upon robots while destroying the ability to draw a line of legal person determination that goes when 2 shopping treated like an actual person, even the AI machines come to fancy properties. The machines have your rights certain allowed to own ownership words matter understanding the alter words meaning Thomas says that the case why not allow non-legal SB says inventor for the same reason Mark and Judas do not list law mystery so word terms is adequately after the project right of visa far more such to the AI neither affordable the same rights if they're given legal rights. They can also violate legal rights assigned a public defender and given a trial. Seize the point legal provisions do not check. King is also about corporate precedent, but this is not true because it would be cited as precedent. It would trigger a slew of changes to property, criminal court, and common law to win in 1980s not established legal performance eventually no the aspect laws no the actual possibility for common law taking account of required by the active legal changes such as property law, criminal court, liability, constitutional rights. Strong line was harder after the plan scrubbed away the old law power law 20 once test law for 2.1 can be pressed smooth so autonomous system provides a fundamental definition. This shift can be hybrid because new technology these steps is often affects our separate the system indirectly versus the most critical levels and the long way strong so we're long term for height how uncertain level of boundaries personal ever respecters the risk not humans. The logic of the plan will be about to custodian rights bill 19 the court determined the person open the door lines the future can will seek out ever since supports the demonstrators set a person be argument about no space and expanded the official past legislation expanding the person's want to explain life how to show that how far the court was going to go to expand the rights. It set precedents by informing the development of common law Fitzgerald in 19 the person to know that a capability to assess legal rights although not humans are the possibility of being recognized by the common law the life of not qualified legal person are to break and down existent threshold it speaks on human law states an opportunity for courts to verify personhood. It'll be reapplied in common law which is impossible to limit with Phyllis and 14 the change to common law says not humans modify common law things for once it becomes settled law the courts about these particular cases one can also hear aside from biomedical research a community will ever happen also by expanding common law this verse also goes to breach legal law that separates humans from non-humans and a chip you'd also get monkeys and rats and files. A third it is not limited to inventive AI. The act is not limited to conception or conceiving inventions. Inventorship spills over to full AI personhood with broad rights and duties for it. And 22 award inventorship for the AI property rights that AI would meet in totally age personhood for all purposes getting them conscious of liabilities such rights and duties can be essentially as it's really inconclusive whether AI can actually think on its own. Excluding some AI from patentability makes it impossible to exclude any other technologies as well confusing Taylor and 16 excludes software providing to be so problematic to exclude some technologies while having and there's including other software could acquire so many inventions but be impossible to exclude the software provides manufacturing projects and the technology that involves computing. The link alone remains the case AI would not conceive of inventions but would also be focused on accumulating wealth and political power to the extent that it does conceive of those inventions will be used to harm humans which turns the entirety of the case and proves that there's no innovative incentive or advantage from the AFF. They say no containment even if we can't control AI there's no reason to become misaligned. Only power accumulations from rights causes it even if it's misaligned it's have legal status. It's probably far more limited. It can't both become precedent. It can be killed with a kill script which is not true from personhood which gives its rights containment a peaceful triad from rights armstrong and follow the methods that can be spirituality to political controls and most often issue capacity spleen practice with fair to hopefully affect the world you see as already boxed by someone who plays within open making around the cage was supposed to not even receive manipulated up here but taking the invention stop right there yeah results after each other the parents they have indulging long-term plans such much as humanity at worst if there's a risk of the link you shouldn't guarantee misalignment by voting affirmative they say AI disclosure this is not the app just because AI can be classified as the inventor doesn't mean we know everything about its inner workings it's rapid and it has an incentive to hide its capabilities builder in 18 the AI changes themselves in such modification love the explosion which they were recursive improvement from this right super intelligence metadata communities and so free energy patterns and humanities survival to from developers a project is smart again not taking over the incentive side its abilities and such as about data inside right until we know a surprise devastating attack they say AGI is inevitable that is answer to power the containment stuff that only rights causes its inevitability which means containment is possible if we don't grant it rights they say no runaway AI it doesn't assume rights that empowers development by blocking regulation that ensures slow takeoff causes ASI even if it's far off it contradicts the one you see by saying that there is not an incentive not an incentive capability or no ability to conceive which we conceded which means if they make this argument or accept extended obviously takes out the after. There's no take backs and overwhelming consensus agrees to amendment 22, but singular happening according to website I expressed yes before. This section difference up to website 1995 agrees in all cases majority expected the average 26. I believe that I would work around the corner to 9% by 2075. AGS is level 2 most exponential learning intelligence plans and power of memory going and exponential by only amount of time. If this is exponential machines go components on 1.2 the quantum and keep reducing concept removes all the Greek nature of computing trained neural networks of the quantum unlocks singularity. A majority of experts agree effort and 18 present day essential and some their types of quantum computing average trend toward a general keeps everybody argument using perception making the phase about the humans when he visits by human level AGI occur within decades and superhuman soon after market human soon after and it cascades into personality to stage 21. Get rid of it.
Too quickly. Order the paragraph. And then we go to the
The one you're sent.
Did you get it?
Huh?
Did you get it?
9 minutes. Innovation, conception, T, this judicial overreach counterplan, I forgot what exactly you all called it, right street. Okay, y'all get it? Okay.
AI innovation unlocks the pharmaceutical renaissance. New creative Alzheimer's programs will sift through billions of protein full combinations in mere seconds, which enables faster drug discovery and pandemic threat analysis through advanced bioforensics, zoonotic monitoring, and streamlined experimental tests that averts an extinction level threat from diseases known to stabilize the globe far faster than it makes scenario by virtue of ensemble pandemics and mass globalization. Innovation is plateauing the status quo. They just read a snapshot card and just moved on. There's now resort of long-term trends that indicates that human innovation is at the peak of its abilities, with only synthesized about 20% of the available protein, available amino acid sequences, but artificial intelligence can basically shock up the last remaining 80% bottleneck. These diseases will cause extinction, and link is not just transmissibility, but add-on effects from disease destabilizing states, which increases the risk of societal collapse and the loss of societal functioning. 1% is a pretty fucking big risk of extinction, and the rest of the defense has to global interconnectedness and the rather massive rise of internet transmissibility in the aftermath of COVID-19. They see the conception advantage. People will sue artificial intelligence or evidence defines two parties: one, data surrogates and clinical trials; two, competing companies. They'll say that either they are the inventors, which are the data surrogates, or that the invention was not created by themselves. So there is a significant litigation incentive for them to overturn existing creative artificial intelligence innovation, which they concede it exists in the status quo. They say yes, biotech innovation or impact rather, or no evidence considers the at-scale application of CRISPR by China. Our evidence indicates that anti-aging creams and bioweapons will be unregulated if China gets a biotechnology label, which will significantly increase the propensity of wanton bioweapons uses, which also fucks over the disadvantage, which I'll explain a little bit later. T writes, I don't know what plan they're trying to rejoin, but the plan explicitly says it bets intellectual property rights in artificial intelligence. So there are evidence describing the distinction between being recognized as an inventor and having intellectual property rights bearing capacity is completely irrelevant for the purpose of the plan, because the plan invests the latter thing that their evidence describes as being ownership as opposed to inventorship. The judicial counterplan. One, yes, deficit. We read a legal uncertainty advantage and legal uncertainty deficit on the other two sheets of the other two counterplans. So the court started this wildfire back and forth between the courts, Congress, and the states would certainly devastate business credibility, and if the plaintiffs and all our evidence contextualized to the United States vesting to write a substantive deterministic one as opposed to one that's completely uncertain and reactionary based on what the courts are doing. Second, no spillover or no impact. They just reread their legitimacy impact card without explaining their internal link. Artificial intelligence is not politicized domain, so there's no reason for us to establish a new kind of legal precedent that applies in the generalized application area for all areas of judicial overreach. Also, the legitimacy doesn't really solve anything there. In fact, having just tagline lists extinction, pandemics, and other things that exist independent of legitimacy seeking, or doesn't really describe any model that Counterplan parade that directly links to that. So you need to win this narrow fucking spillover DA against the AFF to outweigh our very sizable deficit. Permutation do both. This makes sense via a couple of interpretations. One, the United States only means the 50 states. The problem with this Counterplan is they overspecify the agent that prohibits the quote-unquote legal right of the plan. So it can coexist simultaneously with the agent that enacts the plan. The United States includes the 50 states. Paris 11 officially includes the United States includes 50 states. Article 11, last section of the NEG condition is credit for this argument. So either the plan could be the United States being the 50 states enacting vesting legal rights, the judiciary, the federal judiciary striking it down, and the United States then granting the legal rights in response to that, which would be consistent with the ruling by the 50 states. Or two, it could be the United States Congress, legislature, or any fucking body that could vest the legal rights in the plan that people getting it struck down by a subsection of the USFG, the judiciary, and that also getting upheld. This is not in contradiction with the plan because it maintains the initial vest of the right that is established by the agent that we specify via the catch-all term of the United States. One, severance makes no sense in this context because the whole point of the counterplan is to sever the fucking first plan to the counterplan. So if the counterplan does reverse a court decision, then the plan can be included in that action as well. Second, it's not severance or correct that the grant is distinct from the act of vesting, but if that is correct, that justifies the implementation because it proves the grant is not in contradiction to the vesting is using a separate legal channel to reinstantiate the right. Our computer crashed, so of course we get further explanation of the predication, and we don't really have much prep anymore, so I'm not going to spend more time on this argument. Right street. One, it's devastating. You need a issue for this is that the NEG drops CRISPR now. There are zero checks on China's international development of genetically augmented humans, so there's no possibility for us to have any chance of combating that if we don't develop CRISPR ourselves. So the uniqueness problem is flipped. There's only risk of return and the app solving this disadvantage. Second, no link. Spillover is a legal falsehood. It broadly assumes the uniform application of law, which ignores the court's long history of refusing to take resolute stances on legal personality and granting rights on a case-by-case basis for AI. This development of corporate identity established legal distinction between natural and artificial persons, which avoids rights necessitating philosophical inquiries and legal ambitions that can correct any harmful spillovers if they go against human interests. There are two categories of evidence that the negatives read. One, contextual to patent rights only, that it's analogous to human within the patent system. That obviously doesn't matter for the total impacts. Two, extreme pieces of evidence just reassert the premise that our evidence denies things like corporate rights, migrants not having the totality of all rights. Demonstrates that either corporate rights that demonstrates the legal personality has been a fraction of the status quo, and even if that's the case, it doesn't spend rights for every entity across all existing applications of human rights. Our permanent evidence defines a strict test. There's no right to ownership because there's a right to permanent ownership because the rights are immediately vested into the owner of the artificial intelligence system. So there's no way they can maybe try it under civil tort or property law. There's also here's some more evidence. No full person Formal 17 law doesn't make an immunity of the person even if they have immunity measures being our rules. Did you read this card already?
I read.
Okay, the court interpreted questions explicitly separate from broader inquiries. Title 22 covers understanding the individual and natural person unless otherwise noted that individuals not exclusive to organize specifically and AI typically less than invention. The addressing the question broader inquiries missing more long when including the natural rights and the matters. The AI owner holds all the rights to 21. Yes, it's more tools ownership. AI owner consistent with property treaty owners and counting by lease 13. Sci-fi bond involves is finding further distinction with total rights. It doesn't lead to further rights. 21. Yeah, that's a chain foundation event not forcing the for human rights. Subject ones are even by 19 rights and having over the users. Passage of achievement inventor applicant inventorships limited down to 21. Does it?
Okay, cool. Did you read? But you also read this first one, right?
No, I didn't.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
748.
It really does.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be right there.
Last time we talked, we seemed really down. Law school stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure, yeah.
Everyone good for order? Counterplan, decide teeth. Okay. Is anybody not good?
Just give me a sec.
The counterplan is across the 1 year is almost all new after and then concedes all the reason of 2 and 2 and preemptive for why the 1 year should not get to be all new. And even if you gave all the new arguments, they still lose. First is the impact that they conceded the terminal, they dropped the legitimacy impact, which is null as evidence, even if they write this Fridman evidence or the one CP draft into the laundry list, they can see that the legitimacy solves international war. But there is that terminal impact. They can see that the judicial obstruction prevents solving things like disease, climate change, etc., nuclear war, all of which are existential, and that it's all entire digestive. Nobody uses the status quo. The thing for the certainty deficit was new, but either way it was never explained, which means there's no deficit you can vote on. The only thing you can vote on is a very bad proof about that explanation, which conceded framing. But top level, you can also contradict presumption. The 1 year dropped a card in turns case argument on non-enforcement. Did not say durable fiat, did not say anything else. Checks. We read a card that said judiciary will always overturn any rights granted by Congress if they have the final say, which means zero risk of the affirmative. Those conceded the is not going to answers. It's not some shot line that I didn't send out. It was a court argument that Kevin said no words on, so you voted this. Now, the counterplan proper. First step said this is new, even if they said uncertainty on another flow. They did not explain in the tweet why this counterplan's uncertain. The 1 year should not get to do so because it incentivizes liberating debates, cross-lying everything either way. But I'll answer this first. The counterplan fiat's a unanimous decision by the Rebuttal statute, which means that even if initially the counterplan looks uncertain, the counterplan looks more certain because it means the Congress would unanimously get rid of the overturn the second. Second, there's no reason it looks uncertain. It is immediately the counterplan immediately gets rid of what the vesting of the denying vesting. It means all of Congress does it. So there's no reason it looks different. Now, any evidence to make for certainty is not the outcome of the process, or the outcome that they affirmed, not the process itself. There's no reason why the process is certain because even if it was something new or something that people haven't seen before, they know, well, Congress said that this thing is true, and so there's no reason why that means businesses are uncertain. Either way, this is not impacted out, and the deficit is tiny, even if you give it to them, so it's definitely outweighing the risk of the counterplan. Now, the no spillover stuff, the Fridman evidence, I'll quote lines from this. It's in the 1C. First, quote, indeterminacy opens a space for Congress to reclaim authority. If Congress acts, courts will have little power to resist, and These courts have a circuit split that will be resolved in Congress Act. All of this is conceded in the 1AR. It was in cross-text and in the 2C, and they have no answer. They also dropped the Harrison card. It says that, quote, the logic of one case of remedies can be applied to other cases, and that remedies are an open question that will spill over to other entities. All these are dropped, which means even if you think that Cameron's only over only one instance, that one instance would be sufficient to spill over to other than, which answers all this thing about assumptions. Now, they say that the tagline just lists legitimacy. No. One, if so, they dropped the 2C terminal impact card, which is the null evidence that legitimacy is key, but it doesn't. First, it quotes things like climate, disease, etc. It says, quote, they're pressing issues for humanity and our life on Earth, which is obviously an extinction claim because conceded it's up to them. Impact Davis never said so, and the 2AC did not say, oh, they need to read impacts, which why I did not read a new card. Now, all this means impact is massive, and the deficit they go for is tiny and probably non-existent. Pardon both. This is what they're going to go for, and I don't think it's winnable. First, they consider all the reasons why 1AR explanations on pardon both are bad. It encourages sandbagging, it leads to late-breaking debates, which always favor the affirmative, and the box decisions are based on 2AC arguments. The fact that 2AC botched the Catamount is why I spent so much time on the Catamount. I supposed to send no reclarifications, and they never gave a reason why you should allow them 2 hours too late to do so. Either way, this does not matter. First, the U.S. means 50 state stuff. This obviously does not matter at all. We also only say the United States. We do not say the United States federal judiciary, say the United States judiciary, which means if they are all 50 states, we are also all 50 states. And what the Catamount would be the United States. Like the 50 states judiciary is all vesting the rights, which means that this does not matter. If this were true, the Catamount would be all 50 states denying vesting, which is still a mutually exclusive argument. It means that this spin does not matter. I might read parts of this in a second. The second thing was that could be a Congress or legislative thing. This is also mutually exclusive. You not both vest and unvest something. Cross-text. We both agree that both are immediate. Nobody made any argument about should any other wording different, which means this is intrinsic. If the U.S. if their argument is that well, the act happens and we immediately deny vesting, or they not, or the Catamount happens and then we immediately vest to make up for that, then one, it's obviously intrinsic because it adds the delay, which another side has to be conceded they cannot be. But second, it does not solve. Our whole argument is about remedy being overturned by remedy. If their argument is that first the Catamount denies vesting and then the act vests right, it does not change the question of remedies. Yes, it means the plan happens, but it does not mean that Congress has final control over remedies. It just means that the court doesn't do something, and then the court was like, oh, we changed our mind and do something, which means that this does not solve. They drop multiple reasons. They drop multiple arguments on the permutation that filter this, even if you think that this explanation makes sense. First, they consider a conflict is key. This permutation does not have a conflict because it does not mean the courts and Congress disagreed. It means they did something and then immediately undid something, and the Catamount courts would just be enforcing something that helps pass. But second, they conceded the U.S. legal evidence. It must be a mistake by the courts, which they would undo. Finally, they conceded an argument, a framing argument, that if there's no deficit, any risk that the perm solves less means you automatically vote. This would make sense that there's some risk of a deficit that they could balance solving the AFF against, but because we 100% solve the AFF, there's no logical reason to vote on perm to vote. Now, they said that severance, or it does not contradict the original fast. They dropped all the answers. There's no conflict. There's all the bugs. Not solve the question of remedies and the severance thing. The severance is not answer to perm to vote. It's answer to perm to the Counterplan. The severance is about. It is literally impossible to do it both, to do the Counterplan and to not do the Counterplan, or to do both, which means it's not a severance question. It's just this could not actually. The last thing was a computer crash we get for the explanation. This is obviously a joke. One is incentivized teams to just say their computer crash and take more crap. I'm not saying they did so. I don't think so. I feel bad for them, but it's non-falsifiable and bad. Second is that bad things happen. Maybe my docs crashed. We don't know they didn't. All these debate is hard and stuff like that happens. Reason to get new answers. Yeah. Right sweep. Obviously, it's not benefit on the perm. I'm supposed to set the own that benefit was internal, so they cannot go for a turn because of the T. I know conventional debate wisdom is that you should not go for 2 true R's, but this one literally takes me 10 seconds. The only thing the 1AR says this is, quote, the plan text says it revests intellectual property. Their evidence says IP rights to ownership, and then drops plan text in vacuum is bad and a counter-interpretation. There are 2 warrants why plan text in vacuum bad. And this argument, which is we have rights in a plan text, so we topical, is plan text in vacuum. First was incentivized vagueness. They conceded incentivized teams to copy and paste the resolution into the plan text, and then say in the 2C what they do, which is late breaking debates, favors the affirmative. I granted about this in Catamount. Second, they incentivized that they conceded makes any affirmative topical because they would do anything they want, and then copy and paste the resolution and say, well, that part is topical. Both both those go conceded. They conceded the counter interpretation, which that tags and cross tags. All of their evidence specifically says the right of inventorship. Maybe they also grant ownership. That would be extra T, and that was preempted by me saying that they could copy and paste the resolution and then do something else, which means this clearly still is not allowed. And the second thing is that they conceded the counter interpretation. I preempted any offense they might have tried to give, and maybe I didn't flow somehow on it, which is that it does not lead to vagueness. You know they'd be punished if they did in the world of our counter interpret, which means like conceded not top. They're two easy outs, just like conceded rollback and conceded not top. This is backing bad. But if you like, I don't know, more some substance, one needs to kill. There's no deficit. Every explanation is in 1 yard, even if you reach them. Goodbye.
And my I was like, someone got some.
And he was like, I didn't know what you're talking about.
That's crazy. That's a crazy thing to do.
So John had to go get it.
This is one of the more egregious things that I've ever heard to a major. I can't do this without him.
Innovation advantage, the topicality, the remedies counterplan. Anyone not good?
If there's one thing you're certain about at the end of this debate is that disease is the largest impact. Kim is the impact how Chorus says that the risk is statistically and categorically underestimated. It's the single most probable impact. Disease outbreaks have been the largest causes of human mortality in history, but future outbreaks will be far more lethal and virulent owing to mass transportation and globalization, allowing for a small outbreak to spread rapidly. Global COVID was just a break. It demonstrates the institutional weakness of our pharmaceutical system, which can only be remedied through artificial intelligence to address this rapidly increasing inevitable and more probable threat, which will occur naturally or either intentionally. Or intentionally, it massively outweighs the terminal net benefit. I know we might be behind on ethos because of what's happened on this debate, but the 2R severely bungles this debate by not going to the case. Disease, you know for certain that disease massively outweighs a nebulous rule of law net benefit that the 2R really doesn't contextualize. Given that we have a specific large deficit to the counterplan, that you know for certain that the disease should come first. Now the remedies counterplan, the counterplan doesn't, or the remedies are. T. We decisively meet this interpretation. The plan vests intellectual property rights, bearing capacity, and artificial intelligence. We haven't strayed from this definition of the affirmative at any point. Just to clarify a few things, here's how the patent system works. If you're an employee trying to get a patent on the books, you just file for a patent as a legal employee of the company. The patent office will then give you the intellectual property rights of the invention done. The property rights will be immediately transferred over to the company because you signed a work contract saying that the company owns your invention. Now, that's exactly what would happen in the world of the affirmative, except the employee is now an AI agent that basically cuts across all the distinctions or evidence is making two powers and rights. The plan grants the right to AI, and then the right is then moved to another agent. It still vests the right. Plain text in the vacuum does not matter because we've not said we defended anything else outside of this description of what we meant by vesting intellectual property rights. You can go ahead to read one and see promo to support this description. And besides, the 2R does not spend nearly enough time rejoining a specific argument for you to just check out and vote negative on T. Now, the remedies counterplan. The counterplan does not solve the affirmative. There's a large uncertainty deficit that vaporizes the chance counterplan actualize any of our offense. So they're relying on a nebulous rule of law impact and constraining a conservative court to outweigh rapidly encroaching diseases, which you know definitively go existential. This uncertainty, the 200 response to uncertainty deficit is mostly vaguely gesturing that it's new. It is not new. The 2EC was explicitly clear on this on the nearest person counterplan. Regardless of any tech issues we've had, they obviously should have expected the cross application to this counterplan, and they haven't contested any of the reasons that our evidence gives for why this wouldn't apply equally to the nearest person counterplan as the remedies counterplan. All the 1EC and 2EC evidence substantiates how certainty is uniquely key in the pharmaceutical context. Kevin explicitly extends the 1ER, the Cahoy evidence, so I'm just going to extend that so you know this is not new. The 2EC Cahoy evidence was extended in the 1ER and explicitly says that the counterplan's patchwork legal strategy is devastating for businesses because they need certainty of a clear and enforceable legal test being enforced for them in order to invest large amounts of R&D that is necessary for innovation. And the counterplan does not do this because they have no idea how the counterplan will be enforced, which only the plan's consistent ruling and clear demarcation between inventorship and venture allows for leads. The Cahoy evidence is explicit on and not leading to them not participating in the activity altogether. Their only response to this is that our evidence is not specific to the process. Cahoy explicitly is, which Kevin extended, and I explained that above. It's very explicit. The prospect of an uncertain legal test results in inventors not pursuing invention in the first place. The counterplan is a seismic shift to patent law by applying a brand new legal doctrine to this context, which has never been applied in the patent system, in the first place. So inventors have no idea what is going on, and they cannot invest large amounts of R&D necessary for true innovation, which largely conceded now the permutation. Permutation do both. One body in the United States vests a legal right in artificial intelligence. The judiciary fights it by attempting to prohibit the legal right, and then the United States grants a remediating statute that grants legal rights to resolve the conflict. This is totally consistent with their explanation of the net benefit. You still maintain the remedy because the judiciary still bans the act of vested rights in artificial intelligence and maintains the fight that grants legitimacy to the government. We don't need to win our definition of the United States to win this because you can just interpret the permutation as Congress vesting the right in the judiciary, overruling it. But the fact that they dropped the United States refers to the 50 states is devastating because that zeroes the net benefit. All neg evidence refers to federal judicial legitimacy being good, and their presumption argument assumes that Congress gets struck down. We've won that. That's not even the relevant agent that the counterplan fiats. It's not severance. You can simultaneously vest and not vest something if the actions come from different agents, but that's not even the counterplan's phrasing. The counterplan adds the word prohibit, which is compatible with the plan because a separate agent can attempt to prohibit the action of the plan, but that doesn't mean the action no longer exists. It's analogous to a local district trying to prohibit a federal action. One of your explanations are good. This is not a real theory argument in the block. There's no threshold for a new explanation, and this is not a new interpretation that can possibly exclude all the arguments we said in the 1AR. The 1 and C was just the context and a couple of random legitimacy cards. So we get new explanations and response. It's tough to tell whether they're just grandstanding on like or taking this seriously, but our offense is predictability. Otherwise, they can reinterpret the counterplan text in the 2C, and obviously that text, the permutation to both was sent. The permutation to both was obviously in the 2EC, so it's not a new perm text. Now the only really other thing that you can respond to is this presumption argument. We get to respond to this. The 1ER. We get to respond to this. The card was not explicitly tagged as being a turns case argument or implicating the case at all, but solvency. So the 2R explanation is new here, but that surely cannot be an independent valve for you. Their card is not at all explicit to the vendorship context, but it's vaguely about the judiciary overforcing their boundaries when it comes to rights. They have no reason that's uniquely key in the vendorship process.
And it's also about federal courts. We've won the United States.
It's also about federal courts, and we won the United States in 50 states. Now, the net benefit, even if we don't have much mitigation with the case being conceded in the 2R, is the thing that should sway your decision calculus. The 2R mostly just waves this away, but there's no reason overreach in the IP context of nuclear key, especially when the 2R goes for the legitimacy impact. They have no reason why other bodies would interpret the counterplan, the counterplan's restricting of the counterplan's restriction in this unique context is spilling over to all legitimacy.
In the documents, can you please include all of the texts of everything? Plan, counterplan, form, all those things.
You know, it's this is definitely a new thing. I don't think it's a new thing. I feel like the new AirPods. I don't think so. I think the camera's like blurry. Oh, nice. That was insane.
Okay.
I'll go get it. I texted her, but yeah. Can you see it? No, they're not. I texted her back. I was looking at it.
Sorry. Okay, you all good? Okay, congrats to everyone on a really good debate. The decision was a 2-1 for the NEG from Michigan. I voted on the perm. I really thought I was voting NEG after the 2AR, so I'm not surprised that this is a split decision. But then I took a look at your counterplan doc. The counterplan does not, or the text, the counterplan does not fiat that the whole US prohibits the plan like you assert it does. It fiats that the judiciary prohibits the plan. So the perm is the states doing the plan, the judiciary prohibits it immediately at the same time, and then Congress institutes a remedy, and then this all happens at the same time. I think this obviates your answer about the fact that it can't all, most of the 2NR answer about like it's physically impossible for this to happen at the same time. I'm with you until I look at the doc because you start off with an assertion that's false. It can't all happen at the same time because they're different actors, so one can vest and the other can prohibit the vesting. It also, I think, gets rid of your immediacy arguments because this doesn't all happen immediately at the same time, and your arguments about the perm not solving the net benefit because there wouldn't be a conflict. The perm still has Congress remedy the judiciary's decision, which is what your evidence says is necessary, i.e. it would strike down, i.e. that the judiciary has struck down what the states have done or prohibits it, and Congress institutes a remedy to that. And like as to whether or not they get to explain this, like I agree that they don't get to say perm in a doc that's not in the doc and then send it later, or say perm in a doc even if it's in the doc. But like saying perm to both and then explaining how that functions in the 1AR and 2AR, I think is fine, especially because of all this business about actors. For what it's worth, I agree about this like uncertainty deficit business. I don't think that you can say, like you could cross-apply reasons why uncertainty is bad, but you can't say, we said one counterplan was uncertain, therefore we get to say this counterplan is uncertain. Like if you said no impact on a DA and the 1AR in a different DA, you can't be like, here's new impact D because we said no impact. And then I thought for a little bit about this T thing. I think there was potential here, but the 2NR doesn't invest in it in a way that I think is sufficient. I think what you needed to say against the 1AR's argument was not plan in a vacuum, because what they're saying is not that the plan says right, but you need an extra topicality argument coupled with the argument you're making in the block about solvency. So basically they're saying the plan says property rights. So what they grant is, when your evidence makes a distinction, they're saying they grant the thing that would be topical. So you need to say that all of their AFF is about inventorship, so they have to do that too, which is what you say in the block. But then extra topicality is bad, which you don't say.
I'm next. I agree with a lot of that, and I think that if the decision was just about comparing all of the texts that were involved, I would have come out the same way. I showed a little bit more deference to how the arguments got explained. So the 2AC says perm to both shields. I had no idea what that argument was. And I think it's correct that the 1AR has some leeway to recontextualize what that means. But there's so much of an expansion of the argument in the 1AR, given how much the block was strong about not permitting that. And that I'm inclined to agree with the NEG when they're like, here's just like reasons why this extrapolation cannot occur. The 1AR makes an extrapolation but doesn't quite justify it other than a computer crash. I think I'm more inclined to just agree that extrapolation to this extent is not permitted. Moreover, there are kind of like substantive arguments about the permutation and how it relates to the net benefit that I think are probably factually untrue, but just not answered directly. So arguments about needing a conflict between branches of government. I could maybe construct a reason why your permutation should generate that conflict, but the NEG is just like saying how they do that, and you're not saying how you do that. And so I'm more skeptical about the permutation's ability to generate the degree of clamp down on the judiciary that's required. The 50 state argument is, not really discussed very much between the 1AR, the 2NR, and the 2AR. Just looked at the cards, it doesn't say any of these things. It's like respondent is wrong that the United States can't refer to the 50 states or something. And like that's the whole card. And so I certainly don't mean that, I don't take that to mean that the net benefit is like in some way off the table, which is how the 2AR frames it, because for some reason the counterclaims mechanism cannot occur federally. I think it still can occur federally. In light of not everyone really discussing how this would work very well, the texts being very similar and not directly explained, the 2AC being very curt on how the permutation worked, I kind of adopted a posture that's like, I'm just more certain that the counterplan alone can do what it needs to do. And I have lingering doubts and ambiguities about what the combination of these things will accomplish. And because the solvency deficit is obviously inapplicable because the cross application was too new. Also, you dropped the negative argument that the conclusion of the counterplan process would generate all of the necessary amounts of certainty. That I just have more questions about what the perm can do vis-a-vis the net benefit than I have about the counterplan acting alone. I'm just certain the counterplan acting alone can do everything it needs to do. And I don't have that degree of certainty with respect to the combination. Topicality was a non-starter. You didn't extend an interpretation, you didn't extend a violation, you didn't extend an attack.
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with both what Nina and what Miles said. I just think that, similar to Miles, I was very unwilling to give the 1AR and 2AR so much leeway in terms of explaining and re-articulating what the perm does and also what the solvency deficit potentially is as it relates to the different counterplan. And I do think you're kind of running into this problem where, you know, the 2NC is very clear. They're like, okay, no new 1AR explanation. Like they've got what they've got nothing else. And they spend like quite a bit of time saying that. And then the problem is that in the 1AR, you don't do any justification. You're just like, computer crash, so we get to say whatever we want, which obviously unfortunate, but like doesn't really impact the like substance of the debate in a way where I would be like, yeah, you get to say whatever you want because your computer crashed. And then the 2AR has to spend so much time justifying everything that you're not really able to sufficiently develop the substance of your arguments. And so when you're kind of in that situation is like, I'm already very skeptical of most of what the 1AR said on the counterplan. And then most of the 2AR on the counterplan is trying to justify why you get to answer the counterplan as opposed to actually like really substantively answering the counterplan. But I can see a very clear reason for why, for example, the solvency deficit applies to the counterplan. And I can see a very clear reason why this like Cahoy card you think is like a very good solvency deficit to the counterplan. Very much agree with Nina though, that like you don't just get to say that one counterplan is uncertain and then just be like, okay, but then certainty also then applies to this counterplan when you did not say that in the 2AC. And then I am also pretty amenable to some substantive reclarification, or not even reclarification, just clarification of what exactly perm do both means, but not really to this extent. The 2AC really just says the words perm do both. In terms of like fixing this, you would want to make sure. So the first thing is like, I've judged them a few times, and every time I've judged them, they've gone for this counterplan. So like the early indication should just be like in the 2AC, there should be a much larger push against the counterplan in the 2AC, because I imagine if you look at their wiki, it's just this thing. So, you know, more focus on like developing the 2AC in a way that you want it to be set up to take you throughout the rest of the debate. And then that way you don't have to get into this whole debate about like justifying things. And these things are like very small changes. You can say like, our uncertainty deficits from the nearest person counterplan apply here because the reason that the counterplan competes is a reason why it would generate uncertainty, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, but I do think you need to say those things. And then for the NEG is, this obviously wasn't like super relevant for this debate, but like the cards for this are so bad. Like the 1NC is like heinous, especially the impact card for the 1NC, like Petri. It's like it lists the things, like a list of existential threats. There's like 15 paragraphs that you shrunk down really small, and then you highlighted American constitutionalism has been an engine led to great scientific achievement. So, and then you should obviously say something like, hey, they've not introduced the complete argument. Like this is bad. But as it stands, kind of like unquestioned, I'm like, yeah, the counterplan is probably fine.
Also, sorry, not finished.
There you go.
Am I wrong that like the way that the NEG has consistently explained their counterplan is like it also has a delay element, doesn't it? It's like these things aren't simultaneous. It's like otherwise no one would see that there's a conflict. It would just, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, but like maybe the way that we speak is inherently linear, and so it sounds like there's a different delay element when there's not. But the way that all of these things were getting explained to me sounded like there was more opportunity for you to really like not give in on this delay component. I think that there's maybe, and like if the simultaneous thing is enough, then I can't. I thought that there was maybe arguments to be made there. I was not so persuaded that all of the counterplan is like happened at the same time, based on how it's explained.
Yeah, so I agree with most of that. I'm just like, okay, yeah, if you don't get the one-year investigation, okay, obviously, like the domino effect happens. But supposing we did get the one-year and two arguments, I'm not as persuaded. So, like, the substantive reason why the fermentation doesn't generate a judicial conflict, I was kind of confused about because the United States would best the legal right, the judiciary would attempt to ban it, and then we would override that ban by granting the legal right. That's still a conflict, right?
Like I said, the way that the negative to me framed the argument said that banning the vesting of a right and then using a remedial statute instead of a right vesting policy was necessary, and that your permutation can't do that. And then they said something about like, oh well, it's like everyone agreeing and then the court enforcing it, which I didn't quite understand that, but like I didn't catch an on-point answer to that. That the way that the policies would unfold in their world looks like a direct clash between rights granting and remedy statutes, and that your thing would not appear like that to the relevant legal actors.
So I'm just trying to like genuinely understand why it went in this case. Why would the introduction of the plan make the judicial conflict less compelling?
Well, so there's a chance that. So there's a world where all of the right actors in the United States, between the state governments and the federal governments, can do it and produce a conflict. But there's a lot of orientations of all those actors that would not produce a conflict, as I understand it, right? And so like there's a chance, you're right, that the permutation could kind of like, I guess, select the correct actors. Although it would have been nice to hear a little bit more discussion of whether all these definition arguments were specifying actors versus saying what was likely the result of the counterplan or the AFF. And so my understanding is like I'm uncertain about which actors in the federal state system are going to do the plan or do the permutation. There's a version where it's all these federal actors, and that wouldn't produce the right conflict. And they've said that there's a difference between how the counterplan looks on its own, which is it produces just a pure conflict, how the permutation looks, which is it looks like actors that shouldn't be agreeing, and that you wouldn't get the relevant conflict. Like I said, I think there's good arguments with reference to the text of all of these things that suggest that that's not true, but that's just how they're framing the combination early in the debate and consistently.
Okay. So, supposing the one AR said, in addendum to the stuff we did say in the solvency deficits, like we get new one-year answers, like blocked, and then the one that's either introduced a complete argument, they re-explain the counterplan relationship to the permutation, which then see this is virtually like considering new text of the counterplan debate, we get a new answer to that. Do you think if we had those arguments in the debate for 1AR, that would have been enough to entertain?
I think so. Generally in line with what you're saying is like it's still a little tough because I do think the 2AC needs more. That being said, you kind of have to be a little bit creative with how you spin these things in the 1AR to like justify why you get to make these new arguments. And I do think there is an opportunity to exploit just how bad the NEG evidence is in the 1NC on the counterplan. And like it is like weird to say, to be like, we get new 1AR answers because the 1 and C cards were bad. But phrasing it as like the 1 and C did not present a complete argument. Like the cards that say that this like remedial statute solves, and the cards for like the impact are complete non-entities. They don't say anything, and creating an expectation that like the 2AC has to fully substantively respond to any half issue that the 1 and C brings up obviously creates like an impossible burden for the app. So we get some like new 1ARB clarifications of things that we did say in the 2AC. Like that kind of like style of argument I'm probably a little bit more amenable to. But again, as like you could just like, I want to take resolving the issue just like one step backwards, you know what I mean?
I mean, it's a set. That element of the debate seems a little bit out of control because the block that got deleted was the one for this counterplan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I was like, well, given that the universe handed us that thing, like, how can we respond to that?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's obviously like super unfortunate. But that being said, you know, when you're AF, and Miles is going to disagree with me here, but like you do have to maybe like use some other weapons in your arsenal, consider maybe some theory directions, and like understandable that like the block was the one that got deleted, but like you can introduce like a theory argument to make on this counterplan beyond just like counterplans have to be functionally and textually legitimate. You could say conditionality is bad, and that's like a potentially like way you could go, but yeah, just like a willingness to be a little bit more risky, more creative, be willing to do a lot more spin, and I think it'll get you a lot farther. Because as it stands, it's just like the 1 error is not enough justification, and the 2 error is too much justification.
Obviously, in our fix, get rid of T, read states definitions. Do you think states definitions needed? Like,
Like you needed 45 seconds where you just walked, you ended the debate. You closed, like this is not a two. This 2 hours of 2 NC again, and I think a 2 hour that was like, here is what we do. You're certain that what we do solves the app. You're certain that what we do avoids a net benefit. I will now, the controversy of this debate is whether or not combining what we do with the app will solve everything that we have said. Okay, so 1, you kind of stack the deck because it's hard, like, right? Okay. 2, then you should have just judge instruction. Like there are 3 reasons why the overlap does not, 3 independently sufficient reasons why the overlap is not enough. And then you have a little, you know, then you can tie a bow. I know that's not great. Our evidence is not amazing, but all we have to win is a sliver. The 2AC made our block job essentially impossible. You know, those kind of things. And that's what I was hoping that was going to happen in the 2 NR, or I thought you were maybe going to go for T. But there was just so much happening in so many directions.
Yeah, like get rid of T. If what you're going to do with it is what you did with it. Get rid of we secretly said presumption. Less on the certainty deficit, because you're definitely right about that. Less on like, you know, like a little less on the impact and the spillover stuff, because like they didn't say anything about that. And then yeah, more.
given the text for your ballot, should I like would defining the states be necessary, or was there some 2 NR explanation of like, you know, given the way you read the text, like where if they are right about states, like in one which I concede it. So like,
Well, what state's definition would you be reading?
just like United States means federal government.
That would certainly be helpful. It's not strictly necessary, but I certainly think, like, I don't know why you wouldn't read that. And then at least say, like, they're like all of them. So, like, if they're all of them combined, then it still doesn't create the conflict issue. And then I think for me, more of the framing of, like, they have no deficit, so therefore auto neg on would have been helpful. But, like, as it stands with just the sentence of it, I'm like fairly, and like it's tough because a lot of the way you're describing your answers to the firm doesn't really hold. It's not based on what the counterplan does, so I end up concluding it solves like basically all of the net benefit.
Last thing is just T a better 2NR? I just didn't know, did the 2 and C seem credible on T? I wasn't sure if it
It did not seem like that was your plan.
wasn't.
It seemed like it was designed to make the 1AR spend a lot of time, which did not happen.
I had no misgivings that you were planning on going for T, just given, like I said,
Yeah.
you go for this remedial statute thing.
But like, given this 1AR,
You-
is this still?
You could have, but it's certainly not in the way that you did.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah.
Did I cut you off?
No, you're totally good.
Because you said you had the argument you needed in the 2NC, which was just like, look, they have to grant this inventorship. Right, it's not a right. I forgot what your privilege, because that's what all of their EV is about. And they dropped all of the case list, and they dropped our argument plan in a vacuum that you can just add a bunch of untopical stuff to the plan. So that is our extra topicality argument, even if we didn't use the jargon word. And then it's like kind of tough for the app.
When you put it in the order, what I was expecting you to do is go there and be like, they have dropped that there's no such thing as the AI right, and then say presumption. Because you had that argument in the 2NC.
Yeah.
That's what I was expecting was going to happen. You were going to go there and be like, your plan says something that doesn't exist. Maybe that's how I interpreted that argument. That's what I expected you were going to go there and do.
With that,
Weren't they just like, if our definition of what you actually are about is a power. So your plan text doesn't do anything.
But the plan doesn't say inventorship, it says intellectual property.
Oh, so they could still get something that way.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
You said it in the 2NC, didn't you?
So, and they said property rights are fine, and then the app is just like, okay, fine, so we're property.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
never mind. Ignore me then.
that makes sense. Thank you all. Good answers.
Yeah, go ahead.
First one back.
How's it feel?
Like I expected it to.